Albert Camus' The Fall is a confession that actively refuses to seek forgiveness. It functions as an aggressive psychological maneuver designed to implicate the listener. The narrator is Jean-Baptiste Clements. From a bar in Amsterdam's red light district, he introduces himself through a self-invented title, a judge penitent. His story unfolds as an unbroken dramatic monologue. For 5 consecutive days, Clements speaks directly to a stranger whose voice we never hear, creating a narrative that is entirely one-sided. This structure creates a metafictional cage. Because the stranger is silent, you, the reader, must inhabit his space. You are forced into the role of the complicit listener. Clements's confession is a strategic deployment of guilt. He demonstrates a Machiavellian technology of power, actively using his own flaws to gain total discursive authority over his audience. Examining the trajectory of his monologue reveals a disturbing shift. It is the point where individual guilt ceases to be a personal burden and becomes a weapon of mass accusation against modern secular society. The novel arrived in 1956, a critical moment when the Enlightenment promise of rational human progress lay completely in ruins. Post-war Europe was a landscape of moral reckoning and deep-seated ideological exhaustion. Albert Camus wrote from a position of profound intellectual isolation. Following his 1951 essay, The Rebel, he had become a pariah among the Parisian elite. His friendship with Jean-Paul Sartre had collapsed into a public feud. Sartre argued that revolutionary violence was a necessary tool for Marxist liberation. Camus insisted that such ideological absolutes led only to the Gulag. The luminous Mediterranean clarity of Camus' earlier work was gone. In its place was a claustrophobic paralysis, fueled by his inability to find a clean moral path through the horrors of the Algerian War. The Fall is a calculated philosophical response to this era. It serves as a devastating critique of the specific brand of intellectual hypocrisy that Camus saw infecting the French left. The monologue is anchored in the Mexico City Sailors Bar, a dingy establishment in the heart of Amsterdam's red light district. Clements observes that the city's concentric canals map the moral world, comparing their rings to Dante's Inferno. By this logic, the bar's location places the speaker and listener in the innermost circle of hell, the place reserved for traitors. The setting carries a specific historical weight. Clements lives in the decimated Jewish quarter, a neighborhood hollowed out by the mass deportations of the Second World War. He acknowledges that he is living on the site of a massive historical crime. For Camus, this geography proves the collapse of secular humanism in the face of industrial-scale atrocity. In this city, physical geography dictates moral reality. There is no upward escape toward grace, only a closed, deterministic cycle of judgment and damnation. Before his exile, Clements was a figure of absolute prestige. A highly respected defense attorney, he moved comfortably through Paris's most affluent social circles. He specialized in noble cases. His career was built on the public defense of widows, orphans, and those society had forgotten. Clements now diagnoses himself as a covert narcissist. His flawless public facade of virtue was actually a mechanism to protect a fragile, hyperinflated ego. He illustrates this through helping a blind man across a busy street. On the surface, a simple act of charity. But reaching the sidewalk, Clements tipped his hat to the invisible audience, performed exclusively for societal approval. This is the pursuit of narcissistic supply. He utilized morality as a performance, extracting the admiration of others to maintain his own sense of godlike superiority. His moral Eden was rotted at the core. It was constructed entirely on the illusion of altruism, serving only to confirm his absolute dominance over everyone he helped. A performative reality is highly brittle. It depends entirely on the speaker's ability to control the narrative, which makes it vulnerable to sudden system shocks.
The first shock is a public humiliation. In a traffic dispute, a motorcyclist strikes Clements in the face while a crowd of bystanders watches. Clements fails to retaliate. His physical cowardice is exposed in the open air, fracturing the mask of the invincible, righteous man. This fracture leads to an auditory manifestation of his guilt. Alone on the Pont des Arts, feeling a surge of self-satisfaction, he suddenly hears a mocking, disembodied laugh rising from the water. The laughter triggers the memory of his central failure. One night on the Pont Royal, he passed a young woman in black leaning over the railing of the bridge. After walking past her, he heard the sound of a body striking the water. He heard her cries drifting downstream, followed by a chilling silence. He chose his own comfort over her life. He calculated the risk, decided it was too late to help, and walked away without telling anyone what he witnessed.
Philosophers speak of the absolute ethical demand created by the existence of another person in pain. This is a responsibility that cannot be bargained with. In that midnight silence, Camus heard that demand and rejected it. This inaction inflicts an irreparable moral injury. It shatters his grandiosity and permanently destroys the illusion of his own goodness. Faced with this trauma, Camus does not seek a path to change. He pivots to performative guilt, ritualizing his confession to maintain control. This is a direct illustration of what existentialists call bad faith, the act of lying to oneself to escape the terrifying weight of free choice. Camus defines this state through the little e's, a medieval prison cell where a person can neither stand up nor lie down. He willfully embraces this claustrophobia. By defining himself through his guilt, he avoids the responsibility of ever having to make an authentic moral choice again. He operationalizes his confession. Cataloging his own monstrosity, his monologue becomes an acoustic mirror. He shifts his language from I to we, projecting his depravity onto the listener until the room is submerged in shared shame. By forcing the listener to recognize their own cowardly impulses, Camus regains the moral high ground. If everyone is a criminal, no one has authority to judge. This is how he shares his damnation. By democratizing guilt, he neutralizes all external threats and regains absolute discursive dominance. The monologue reaches its climax on the 5th day. Camus, feverish and ill, reveals the final secret he has been guarding in his apartment. He reveals the contents of a hidden cupboard, the stolen Just Judges panel, showing righteous men riding toward the adoration of the Lamb. This panel was actually stolen in 1934 and never returned. By weaving this real historical theft into the story, Camus highlights a Europe where order has been permanently lost. Camus uses this image to make a profound theological point. By hoarding the panel, Camus physically and symbolically severs earthly justice from divine innocence. In a secular theater where grace is absent, judgment becomes horizontal and relentless. We trade the divine courtroom for a public tribunal, where morality serves as a blunt instrument for social control. This state is the direct inverse of Camus' earlier ideal, Sisyphus, the absurd hero who pushes a boulder up a mountain for eternity. Sisyphus achieved a tragic joy through lucid rebellion against the absurd. Camus is also lucid, but his clear-sightedness has curdled into a terminal nihilism. At the novel's end, Camus hallucinates the woman falling from the bridge once more. He feigns a desire to save her, then immediately expresses relief that the water is too cold. He is trapped in a layer of impenetrable ice. He concludes the novel with a terrifying expression of relief. Fortunately, he prefers the safe certainty of eternal damnation to the vulnerability of authentic moral action. The monologue stops, but the trap is complete. The silence that follows is your own, an indictment of the reader's shared history and unacknowledged complicity.